Hello everyone and welcome to NGLAB Pro. I'm Mo. We're going to continue our IELTS writing course for getting 6 with the third type of questions for task 2 called advantages and disadvantages. First, we're going to go through the form of the question and then we will see an example through brainstorming and then a sample writing. And finally, we will go through some expressions that are going to be useful for writing this type of questions. Let's start. Let's go through the form of these type of questions. Well, at first you're going to have a premise and then one of these two questions will be asked. What are the advantages and the disadvantages, or do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? Outweigh here means whether the advantages have a heavier weight compared to the disadvantages or the opposite. Is there a difference between these two questions? No. It doesn't matter whether the first question is asked or the second question is asked. In both cases, you have to mention which ones outweigh the others. Let's take a look at two examples. Well, the first one is, in many cities, there is a lack of space to develop, and as a result, in order to modernize, old buildings are demolished and replaced with new buildings. Demolished means destroyed, destructed. Do the advantages of knocking down old buildings outweigh its disadvantages? Knocking down again means demolishing, destroying. Well, from the beginning, from in many cities up to buildings is the premise, and then we have the question. Let's take a look at another example. Some people think it should be compulsory for people to retake their driving test every 5 years. Compulsory means it should be a must. It should be obligatory. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this? Again, from the beginning, some people up to 5 years is the premise, and then we have the question. Well, there are some points to mention. Remember that the question has this plural S. We say advantages and disadvantages in both forms of this question. It means that you need to mention at least 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages, not just one. This is very, very important. And remember that you must mention your idea in the writing. You must say whether the advantages outweigh or the disadvantages outweigh. And the best place to state that is at the beginning in the introduction and also in the conclusion. In both places, you must mention whether the advantages outweigh or the disadvantages. Now, let's go through the way that we should organize our paragraphs in this type of writing in order to be able to get 6. Well, at the beginning, you're going to have introduction as usual and 2 body paragraphs again and 1 conclusion, like always. Well, in the introduction, you paraphrase the question. You reword the question with new grammar, new vocabulary. By new vocabulary, I mean synonyms of the words that are used in the question, in the premise, and the rest. And then you should express your view. It means you should mention whether the advantages outweigh the disadvantages or the opposite. In the first body paragraph, you should write the advantages, at least 2 advantages. I don't recommend writing more because writing 3 advantages will take a lot of space. And then body paragraph 2 mention 2 disadvantages. Again, 2, not 1 and not more than that. If you write more, there is no problem, but you wouldn't have time to manage it. And then in the conclusion, again, you should repeat your view by saying why you think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages or the opposite. There should be a reason for your idea, why you think the advantages are more. Why you think the advantages outweigh and have a heavier weight. Let's take a look at the example question that you have already seen. After that, we're going to go through the brainstorming of the ideas related to this topic. Let's start. Well, the question is, in many cities, there is a lack of space to develop, and as a result, in order to modernize, old buildings are demolished and replaced with new buildings. Do the advantages of knocking down old buildings outweigh its disadvantages? Knock down, demolish, destroy, destruct, all of them are synonyms. Well, let's go through the advantages of this topic first. Well, you can say that there will be more space for modern infrastructure. I mean, cities can build taller buildings, offices, or public spaces to meet the growing population needs. Another one could be improved safety. By improved safety, I mean many old buildings are not safe anymore, and then they do not actually follow the modern safety standards and could be dangerous. So this is another advantage of doing this. Another advantage could be energy efficiency and sustainability. By that, I mean that new buildings can use eco-friendly materials, and as a result, they can save energy, which is better for the environment as well. Next one is urban planning and smart cities. Modern architecture can make a city more attractive to tourists and businesses, definitely. Now let's go through the disadvantages. What could be the disadvantages of that? A loss of cultural heritage. Old buildings often have historical or cultural values, and destroying them may erase a part of a city's identity. Another one could be the high cost and waste. It would be very, very expensive to demolish and rebuild the new buildings. And then the waste is going to be problematic as well. Another one is displacement of residents and businesses. It means that at the time that this reconstruction is happening, we have to move the people that are living in those buildings or the businesses which are in those buildings, and then we have to relocate them. And finally, it will have a short-term disruption. I mean, there will be noise, traffic, air pollution, or any other kinds of pollution during the demolition, and the construction can affect daily life in that area. Let's take a look at the sample writing for this topic. The topic is here again for you. In many cities, there is a lack of space to develop, and as a result, in order to modernize, old buildings are demolished and replaced with new buildings. Do the advantages of knocking down old buildings outweigh its disadvantages? Let's go through the paragraphs one by one. Let's go to the introduction at first. In recent years, many cities have been replacing old buildings with modern ones to solve the problem of limited space. While this process can lead to some disadvantages, I believe that the advantages are more significant. So I want to say that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. If you take a look at this topic again, you can see that from the beginning, I mean from in recent years, up to the word limited space is the reword of the question. I mean, I have paraphrased the question in the first sentence, and then in the rest, I have actually mentioned my idea. I believe that the advantages are more significant. I mean, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. That is another way of saying this. I mean, in order not to repeat the word outweigh, you can say that advantages are more significant, or the opposite, you could have said. And then let's go through the first body paragraph. We're going to talk about the advantages first. One clear advantage of replacing old buildings is that it creates more space for modern infrastructure. This is the first advantage, and now I'm going to explain that. For example, cities can build high-rise apartments or office blocks that can hold more people or businesses in the same area, which helps reduce overcrowding. This is especially useful in large urban areas where land is very limited and expensive. This was the expansion of the topic, the expansion of the first advantage. Then we have another advantage. Another strong benefit is that new buildings are usually much safer. I'm going to talk about the safety. That is very important. And then from here, I'm going to develop that. Many old infrastructures were built with outdated materials and methods, and over time, they can become unstable. In contrast, modern buildings follow strict safety regulations and use advanced technologies, which makes them more resistant to natural disasters like earthquakes or fires. I've also used examples here. Now I'm going to move on to the next paragraph, which will contain two disadvantages. However, with the word however, I show that I'm going to talk about the opposite view. Demolishing old buildings also has some downsides. One of the main concern is the loss of cultural and historical value. So this is the first disadvantage. Many old buildings represent a city's historical history and identity, and once they are destroyed, they cannot be replaced. For instance, old theaters, churches, or traditional houses often hold sentimental value for local people. The second disadvantage. Another disadvantage is the high cost of demolition and construction. Tearing down large structures and buildings and building new ones requires a lot of money and time, and it also creates a lot of waste which can harm the environment. Now we should go to the conclusion. In conclusion, although replacing old buildings can have some negative effects, the benefits of better infrastructure and safety are more important. Therefore, I actually mentioned here that it is more important to have safety and better infrastructure. Therefore, I believe that the advantages of this practice outweigh its disadvantage. So again, I summarize. I paraphrase the question in the first paragraph, in the introduction, and I mentioned that the advantages are more. In the second paragraph, I mentioned 2 advantages, and I have actually expanded both of them. In the next paragraph, which I started with however, the second body paragraph, I started it with however, and then I mentioned 2 disadvantages, and I actually expanded both of them again. And in the final paragraph, I've mentioned my idea once more by saying that the safety is more important in a building. That's the way you should organize your ideas into different paragraphs in this type of writing. In order not to repeat the word advantage and disadvantage, we can use some synonyms. Well, these synonyms will make your essay less repetitive and will give it more variety. Let's take a look at them. Instead of the word advantage, you can use the words benefit, plus point, merit, good point, or pro. Of course, the last 2 ones are less formal. Instead of the word disadvantage, you can say drawback, minus point, demerit, bad point, and con. So you can see that they are in pairs. You can say benefits and drawbacks, plus points, minus points, merit, demerit, good point, bad point, pro, and con. Remember, the last 2 ones are less formal, so the first 3 ones have priority. They will give your writing more variety. Here we have some useful expressions that can be used in IELTS writing, especially in this type. Well, for the introduction, you can use these 2. You can say it is often argued that, or you can say although there are some drawbacks, I believe the benefits outweigh them. For the first body paragraph, the advantages, you can say so. You can say a further or advantage is, or another advantage is. You can say this can lead to, this helps to. And for the second body paragraph where the disadvantages are discussed, you can use this. You can say, however, one clear disadvantage is that, a common concern is that, this can be a problem because, or it could also lead to. And for the conclusion, you can use this. You can say, I believe the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages, or despite these disadvantages, the rest of the sentence. Or you can say, overall, the benefits of the issue are more significant than the drawbacks. These are some of the expressions that you can use in your writing. Of course, they are more useful in writings where you can get 6 to 6.5, not more than that usually. More than that, you need to use more authentic sentences that come from yourself. You have to come up with new sentences yourself. You shouldn't use prefabricated sentences. But in general, you can use these in order to get 6 or 6.5. To sum up, I should say that in this type of writing, both advantages and disadvantages must be discussed. You should mention at least 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages. Don't forget that. And remember that you must say whether the advantages outweigh the disadvantages or the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. This is very, very important. Another point to consider is that different paragraphs should be dedicated to advantages and disadvantages. I mean, you cannot mix one advantage with one disadvantage in one paragraph. One of the central paragraphs is fully about advantages and another central paragraph is fully about the disadvantages. I hope that you've learned this lesson well, and don't hesitate to ask your questions in the comments. I will try to answer them as soon as possible. Hope to see you again soon, and thank you for watching this video of EngLab Pro. Bye for now.